I'm Mr. Beat. Our story features 7 countries. Who do we ask for help when we don't know where places are located? That's right, map. You have to say map. There he is. I'm the map, I'm the map, I'm the map, I'm the map, I'm the map! Here are the 7 countries we are looking at in this video. The United States, the Soviet Union, Iran, Iraq, Nicaragua, Lebanon, and Israel. Thanks, map. I'm so sorry about that. I'll never do that again. You may remember that the Cold War is so easy to define that even my brother can do it. But let's review, shall we? The state of political hostility that existed between the United States and their allies and the Soviet Union and their allies from 1945 to 1991. That's lovely. This video is about the Iran-Contra imbroglio. That's a fun word. Imbroglio! But more commonly known as the Iran-Contra Affair. Once upon a time, a dude named Ronald Reagan was an American president. When he first took office, he was pretty passionate about fighting communism, with a capital C, in particular, the Soviet Union. Even though the Cold War had been going on for 36 years, tensions were still high between the two countries. It's safe to say that Reagan escalated those tensions during his first years in office. Specifically, Reagan had 2 ongoing Cold War problems he had to deal with. 1, the spread of communism in Latin America, and 2, extremists in the Middle East who kept taking American hostages. During the first hours of his presidency, Iran released 52 Americans who had been held hostage for more than a year. Militants first kidnapped them after invading the American embassy in Tehran. In the aftermath of what became known as the Iran hostage crisis, relations between the United States and Iran remained hostile. Oh, please keep in mind that many Iranians were upset with the United States for decades before this, ever since the United States played a big role in overthrowing their popular elected leader, Mohammad Mossadegh, in 1953. Anyway, Reagan continued a ban on providing weapons to Iran, just like former President Jimmy Carter did before him. Meanwhile, Iran found itself at war with its neighbor to the east, Iraq. After Iraq tried to take over some of its territory, well, guess which side the United States supported? Yep, Iraq. It gave them lots of money, weapons, and information to help them. And then, another hostage crisis. This time in Lebanon, during the Lebanese Civil War. Beginning in 1982, members of the Islamist militant group known as Hezbollah kidnapped 104 foreign hostages. Most of them were Americans. It's important to know that Hezbollah had direct ties to Iran. So what does the Reagan administration do? Why, sell weapons to Iran, of course. Wait, what? Wasn't there a ban on providing weapons to Iran? Weren't Iran and the United States big enemies? Okay, so here's where Nicaragua comes in. You forgot about Nicaragua, didn't you? Remember, Reagan was fighting communism all around the world, not just in the Middle East. In Latin America, the fight was just as active at times. Nicaragua's government was ruled by Marxists, socialists, communists, and whatever scary word you want to think of. Basically, the Sandinista National Liberation Front. Their members were called Sandinistas, and they still exist today. In the early 1980s, they were rather authoritarian, and the Reagan administration thought they had to go down. So they supported the Contras, a diverse group of rebels trying to topple the Sandinista regime. Here's the thing, though. The United States Congress had cut funding of the Contras. In fact, it passed a law known as the Boland Amendment, which specifically said the United States couldn't help the Contras overthrow the Nicaraguan government. A big reason why was a link between the Contras and the cocaine trade. More on that later, but you all know about this because you watched that episode of American Dad, right?
In the 80s there was Cold War drama. We fought the commies inside Nicaragua. Our friends were the Contras, freedom was their mantra, so we sent them lots of money for guns and landmines. But Congress stopped the Contra money flow, just cause they moved a teeny bit of blow.
But the Reagan administration was going to overthrow the Sandinistas anyway. That's right, they were breaking the law. But how would they get away with it? Well, remember how I said the Reagan administration would sell weapons to Iran? Yeah, they would sell weapons to Iran. Now, the official explanation later on by the Reagan administration was that they sold the weapons to Iran in order to free the American hostages Hezbollah had in Lebanon. However, as it turns out, they were selling weapons to Iran before the Lebanon hostage crisis. In addition, and this may sound crazy to some, but Israel helped coordinate the deals. Israel, a country that was definitely an enemy to Iran, and they still are enemies, by the way. But Israel wanted Iran to continue fighting that war with Iraq. You know, keep them preoccupied so they wouldn't be a threat to them. Now, much of the money the Reagan administration got for selling weapons to Iran would then secretly go to help fund the Contras in Nicaragua. The Central Intelligence Agency, or CIA, helped this money stay off the books. Eventually, Iran did manage to free at least one American hostage in Lebanon. But again, the Reagan administration was breaking the law. Congress had violated the ban on military aid to the Contras.
His name was Oliver North. He and Reagan went around the sissy Congress. Ollie North, Ollie North. You see, North secretly sold missiles to a harmless country called Iran that would always be a grateful ally. Then he gave the profits to the Contras. Genius!
Yeah, more on Oliver North in a bit. Later on, we found out that the CIA was possibly also buying cocaine from the Contras to help fund their resistance, and that may have also played an important role in the creation of the crack cocaine epidemic in the United States? The CIA denied this, however, and investigations by other parts of the federal government never found evidence for it either. That's all I have to say since the CIA is monitoring this video right now. Don't move, they're watching us. Anyway, enough about the drugs. There was no doubt the Contras were getting support from the United States. In November 1986, the Lebanese newspaper Al-Shara reported on the arms deal, and the rest of the media soon began to find out the rest. Many Americans were outraged. Immediately, all those involved began to destroy the evidence as quickly as possible. It was too late. The United States Attorney General, Edwin Meese, led an investigation into it, even though he may have been in on it. One dude did come forward and admit wrongdoing. Yep, that was National Security Council staffer Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North, who admitted his involvement with getting money illegally to the Contras. North's boss, the National Security Advisor Robert McFarlane, who had resigned before news broke of the scandal, attempted suicide before scheduled testimony. Even though North said Reagan knew all about the deals, Reagan claimed he was innocent of wrongdoing and didn't know what his subordinates were actually doing. But remember, just 15 years prior was the Watergate scandal. So many Americans didn't believe Reagan when he said that. Reagan did go on TV in March 1987 and seemed to take responsibility for the imbroglio, though Congress investigated and ultimately found that Reagan himself did not actually know the extent of multiple programs in the Iran-Contra Affair. In other words, he was apparently out of the loop. So they didn't indict him. However, Congress indicted several dozen Nixon administration officials and eventually convicted 11, including 4 CIA officers. They even indicted the former Secretary of Defense Caspar Weinberger, Oliver North, Robert McFarlane, and McFarlane's successor, John Poindexter, were all found guilty for their involvement. North got off relatively easy for his cooperation, and the next president, George H.W. Bush, actually pardoned all 3 of them. All 3 are still alive, actually, and North even ran for Senate and had a long career in right-wing media. Oh, and remember, George H.W. Bush was vice president when all this was originally going down. That didn't mean he knew about it, but he probably was friendly with all involved. In the final days of his presidency, after losing re-election in 1992, he pardoned the rest of those indicted or convicted. The Iran-Contra Affair was probably the most serious scandal of the Reagan presidency and hurt his legacy, especially regarding foreign policy. To this day, many contend that he knew more than he actually said he did. Still, Reagan remained a popular president in his final days in office. And overall, a general mistrust in government, which really took off with the Vietnam War and the Watergate scandal, only continued to grow. But I hope you at least trust me. I know some of you don't. The CIA certainly doesn't trust me because they've been monitoring me this entire time. I'm not paranoid. They're watching me, dude. They're watching all of us right now. I gotta go. Don't forget to check out the rest of the Project Mad playlist. That is also down below in the description. So what do you think about the Iran-Contra Affair? Do you think Reagan got off scot-free and he probably should have been in trouble? What about George H.W. Bush pardoning all those people involved with the scandal? Yeah, let me know down below. Also, in case you're wondering, I do have all the sources I've used to research for this video linked down below in the description as well. I do that for every video. I always encourage my viewers to not just watch my videos, but go out and research this stuff yourself. It's fun to read through hundreds of pages of legal documents, I promise.